Hogsty.
Hey everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Hogsty. This is your host, Alex Zeese, with you. I've got Steve here with me. Jamal texted that he's got a lot of stuff he's running around doing, so he's busy tonight. I feel for him because, that's going to be me starting next week, as Steve knows. I like the next few weeks for me are just going to go insane, so you probably will miss me on a few shows coming up. Anyway, that is not what we're here to talk about. We have some big stuff that's going on with the Washington football team, and we need to talk about it, folks. First off, story number one, I'm sure you've heard about it. Ryan Vermillion, the athletic trainer for Washington, busted in some kind of DEA raid. It sounds like we don't know what he's being investigated for, but he's being suspended from the team. The DEA raided the facilities, raided his home. It's not good for him, but Steve, as somebody with a lot of legal knowledge, why don't you kind of take us through what you've heard and what the legal ramifications for him might be, for the team might be? And again, we don't know the details yet. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, well, first of all, this isn't one of these things that I can go peek in some records and dig them up and use my bar card to find them, because this is just an investigation, and these details are almost never made public. Every once in a while, you'll see like a statement or something if it's a high-profile enough case, but this is not. Like, for example, I mean, the Justice Department made a statement about the Clinton Portis and Robert McCune case, but that's not the case here. So DEA...
Well, that had a grand jury involved and stuff at that point, right?
Yeah, they did, but usually they don't even make a statement about that, but they did in that case. But so this case is the DEA, which, if you don't know, is the Drug Enforcement Agency. So this means they're looking for drugs. Now, we can speculate a little bit here.
Sure.
The federal government does not get involved in small cases, okay? Having brought cases to the FBI, I can tell you that if it's too small or they're just not interested, they go, call the local cops. Because that happened to me, personally. Not as a defendant, but as someone who's trying to bring a rank fraud case to them. And they went, oh, so what? We don't care. So this is probably... If I had to guess, and this is not based on inside knowledge, anything like that, this is just me guessing, okay? But if
Educated
I had to
guess.
Yes. If I had to guess, this is part of an interstate drug trafficking ring. That would be my guess as to what's going on here. Now, as to what drugs, and we can only have no idea. It could be anything, but I would get the feds are not going to get involved in like Ryan Vermillion is, growing opium, at his house. That's not what they do.
No,
what they look
if he's
like,
growing weed at home or opium or whatever,
the feds don't care about any of that. So what this is probably they are investigating a large interstate drug ring of which they allege that he is part. So we'll find out in time. So what did the Redskins do, or Washington? They put him on administrative leave, basically. So they suspended him, more or less.
Right.
And they brought in Bubba Tyer. I guess he was on the sidelines. I saw that note today. But in terms of Vermillion,
he was hanging out with Norv Turner, which feels very throwbacky.
Those
two are just hanging out at Redskins or Washington football practices again.
Yeah.
And I saw there was a little video of them joking it up with Scott Turner. And now I will say one thing about Bubba Tyer, our buddy Rick. He was very excited to see Bubba back on the sideline because Bubba saved his life when he had a heart attack years and years and years ago. So
it was a long time ago.
Yeah,
but
Rick is very loyal to Bubba.
Yeah. So the NFLPA spoke about this, and here's their statement. We believe this situation directly impacts player health and safety. The NFLPA insisted on language in our collective bargaining agreement that obligates clubs to adhere to all state and federal laws and regulations. We look forward to learning more so we can protect our players. In other words, the statement says absolutely nothing and is totally worthless. They put out a statement because they had to say something. So that gives us no insight. So that's about all I
did the same thing. Their statement says absolutely nothing. It's like we can't say, and I get people were grilling the team for this, Steve, that they didn't put a lot out. They can't, right? One, they probably don't have a lot of information.
Well, it depends.
And if you were the lawyer for the team, you would tell them, just keep your mouth shut.
I would tell him not to put out any statement at all, is what I would tell him.
Exactly.
So here's the thing. This could be like an allegation of Ryan Vermillion trafficking street drugs.
Sure.
Or this could be an allegation somehow involving the NFL or involving painkillers that he's doling out to players,
Right. Which
in
is
the
my
building.
concern, because
Yeah, that's
I think it's
it.
a logical concern to think, hey, your head athletic trainer who has access to all these drugs is giving these drugs to players. That would
Or
be the
selling them to
logical concern.
players or
Yeah,
trafficking them somehow. So what if you want to root for something, well, first of all, root for this is all a mistake. But
sure.
absent that, what you need to root for is he's doing something totally on his own. He's trafficking coke or something, who knows. But the worst thing for the team would be that this somehow is going to end up involving players because he's selling or trafficking or giving away or marketing painkillers to players. I'm not
Right.
alleging that. I'm just saying that would be the worst case scenario, I think, for the team as a whole.
Absolutely. I want to be very clear. We have no details. No one has any details.
Yeah, again,
You
this is
know,
not something I can look up a record and figure it out. There's no way to do
right.
that.
We are talking scenarios that would be bad, scenarios that would be less bad. There's no good scenarios at this point already because the DEA has already raided your office. And every scenario from here starts with that's bad. Let's hope everything's a mistake.
Yeah, and now here's
you
the
know.
thing, though. I mean,
Yeah.
they have evidence to raid his office.
Right.
So he's not doing at a minimum they're covering their bases. At worst, they have evidence that there was something to find in his office, which means it's on Redskins property or Washington property. So they
Right.
didn't just raid his home, put it that way.
They can't just raid your office willy nilly. They have to go to a judge and all that
Well,
stuff.
they have to get a subpoena, a
Yeah.
federal subpoena, which they did. And so what this tells me is that the DEA had some enough evidence to trigger a subpoena to get a raid out of his office. So
Right.
that means they think something he was doing something out of his office. That doesn't mean he's doing anything but slinging coke to kids, or whatever. That sounded horrible. That doesn't mean he's not selling street drugs. That just
Right.
means they think he might be doing it out of his office. So the best thing would be, like I said, that he is involved in some street drug ring thing, absent not doing anything. Of course, the best thing would be
Right.
he's involved in some street drug thing.
It has nothing
And
to do with the team.
right, the
Right.
worst thing would be is if this is an NFL painkiller type investigation.
And here's what I'm going to say. Unfortunately, the reality when you think about what this guy's job is and all that stuff, head athletic trainers make decent money. And this guy's been doing it for a long time. He's probably not selling weed on the side. Just let's be honest about that. Or he's probably not running a coke operation because he's been in Carolina and Northern Virginia for his whole career.
I mean, he might be. I mean,
He
I
might
think
be, but
it's definitely not an allegation of some small time weed thing,
right,
because the DEA does not do that. That
right,
much I can tell you. To trigger federal investigations, there's a threshold, and below that they dump that on the states. And so they think he's a part. My guess would be they think he or alleging or investigating a role he is allegedly playing in some larger drug ring of some type.
right. And it's
What it is, don't know.
don't know. Here's what we do know. Vermillion's been with Ron Rivera for almost 2 decades of his NFL coaching career. This was one of Ron Rivera's guys who he brought with him from Carolina. They've worked together. I think the number I've heard is 18 years.
Is it
And
that long? Wow.
yeah. So Rivera had no idea about whatever this was going on. Let's assume, you know. And this is a guy who's been his right-hand man. I was listening to Kurt, or no, it wasn't Kurt. Who was it? It was Russell and Methurst's show. They had Gruden on. He was talking about the relationship between an athletic trainer and a coach, and it was interesting to me that he compared it as much as important as that with your offensive and defensive coordinators.
Really?
Yeah, because your athletic trainer, you're meeting with him every day to know who's healthy, who's not, who can play, who can practice, how much of a workload a guy can have. They have a huge say in all that stuff.
Well, let's also not pretend that Washington hasn't had complete disaster at the training position for years.
That's true too. And Vermillion's only been here for a year. Before that, I can't remember the name of the guy who was here under Shanahan and Gruden.
I don't
It
even want to remember it. I
Yeah,
put it out of my head.
yeah. So, but that brings me to the interesting thing. the very first call that this team made when Vermillion got in trouble, Bubba Tyer, who was with this team for 37 seasons, starting back with George Allen in the 70s, all the way through Gibbs, and he retired in 2009 right after Gibbs left. That's the first call they made, and now Bubba Tyer is back in that job after retiring for a decade.
Well, that's what I want to, and I guess I'm asking you, Alex, because I don't know. I didn't see any statement from the team. I mean, we knew that Bubba was there, but he
Right.
could have just been visiting with Norv, and it was a weird, strange coincidence. Do we
All the
know
beat
that he's
writers
back?
have made it seem like this is now Bubba's job. It doesn't sound like he might have been offered it officially, or if he might just be consulting until they find somebody, but he's here to fill a void, because you can't if the athletic trainer's job is as important as Jay Gruden said on the radio, to Pete and Chris Russell. I keep on saying Kurt Russell. I don't know why.
It's not Kurt Russell. I mean, Kurt might be.
Kurt Russell and Chris Russell are very different people. And if Russell actually listened to the show, he would probably find it very funny and flattering in a way. Yes. So Chris Russell and Pete had, if that's true, and this is like your third most important guy on your coaching staff, or up in that top 3 category, you need somebody, right? I mean, I get that. I think we all understand that.
For what it's worth, Vermillion is still listed on the team's website, which that means nothing. But
no. I mean, they did publicly say he's on an administrative leave. I don't know if you can. And
but
Steve,
Bubba Tyer is not listed. Is my point.
Can you fire somebody if they've just been accused of something like that? I don't know.
Well, I mean, okay, so all these, it's not like you work at Target. If you work at Target,
you have a job here.
Well, okay, but let me explain though. See, if you work, most companies you work at, you're what's called an at-will employee, which means they can fire you for basically any reason at all, unless they're discriminating against you in some way or doing something else illegal. Almost everybody in the NFL works on a contract. None of them are at-will employees. And so the trainer is also a contract employee. So there will be provisions in his contract that are also governed by a collective bargaining agreement, most likely, that provide for when and under what circumstances he can be fired. So, and there's probably a catch-all. It's probably pretty broad. I've never seen a trainer's contract, so I can't speak specifically to it. But my guess is that probably has some provision in there, something to the effect of, if you make us look really bad, we can fire you, type of thing. That would be my guess, but I'm not 100% sure. But it's not going to take much to fire him.
But at the same time, you also have to be cautious. You don't want to just fire a guy, and then you find out it's nothing. Or
that's why they didn't.
Yeah, that's why they didn't. They haven't made any kind of.
But on the other hand, if you see a federal, a 15-count federal indictment dropped on him, they're going to fire him, and his contract probably allows him to do that.
Yeah. I'm assuming they'll be fine from that standpoint, but I can also understand. This is all, 3 days old that this first happened, or it happened.
Listen, the feds could have been looking for Rhiannon Vermillion for all we know.
Yeah.
It could be a total mistake. It's like, whoops, sorry.
Or they were looking for Vermillion with one L,
Right. Or Matt Vermillion, who knows? But we just don't know. But I would expect if you see an indictment, they're probably going to can him, would be my guess.
Sure. And look, okay, we got to move on to the Saints game. We're already halfway through the show technically, but this is a big thing. You don't have, federal raids of NFL offices
it's only in Washington. It's never ending story with this kind of stuff.
Well, so here's my conspiracy theory, and you're not gonna love it, but so the Nationals did DEA night at their stadium like last week, and
they
then
did the Drug Enforcement Agency night.
Yeah, which I mean, it's DC.
That's a bit odd, but okay.
It's very odd. The next day, they raided the Washington football team facility. I think the learners behind all this. That's my theory.
Maybe the DEA is just mad that they didn't have a Redskins DEA night.
Yeah. We didn't get free tickets to the Saints like we got to the Nats.
We're going to raid your trainer's office. Team.
Yeah. That's what it is. That's what it's all. Let's do this. All right. Well, okay. We got to move on to, though. Let's go to the injury report,
Okay.
all this stuff, because there's
You
some
want to do
big
injury?
moves.
Okay,
Yeah.
so there's a bunch of injuries. There's obviously a huge list, so we're just
Right.
going to cover all of it. So John Bostic, Torrey McTyer, Logan Thomas, all to IR.
Right.
They brought up Danny Johnson and Jordan Kunachik
Kunachik,
from
yes.
Kunachek. I think it's Kunachik. But anyway, they brought Johnson and Jordan K up from the practice squad to the active roster. They signed somebody named Chris Blewett, which what a heck as a kicker, what a heck of a name is
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. Well, and he's got a 69% field goal accuracy
Listen,
rating too. So
before anyone gets all excited, because I know it's like the hate Dustin Hopkins train, they had a kicker on the practice squad last year too, so this doesn't mean anything.
yeah.
But anyway, then they signed Damien Willis as a wide receiver, who I'm sure Mr. and Mrs. Willis know who he is,
Yeah.
but they're the only ones. And then the bigger signing was that they replaced Logan Thomas with Jay Sternberger, who was a third-round draft pick 3 years ago, or
Right.
2 years ago rather, in
He was
2019.
with Seattle on their practice squad. For those who
Well,
don't know.
he's been to 3 teams in the past 2 weeks because he was actually with Green Bay at the end of in September 21st when they cut him, and then Seattle signed him to the practice squad the next day, and now he's with Washington. So he's been to
Right.
3 teams very recently.
You know, like, do you even unpack your bag? Do you just like want? I feel like guys like that, they just have like the old stick with the handkerchief and clothes on them at this point. You know.
It's like a hobo with a stick and a thing
Yeah,
over
yeah.
his shoulder.
But they're
Look,
6'6", 250 pounds.
so back in 2019, I had him rated. I did our tight end draft analysis.
Right.
I had him rated as a third round pick because he was known for having pretty decent receiving skills, but he wasn't much of a blocker. And he was running a mid 4.740, which even by tight end standards is not fast. Certainly
No.
not for receiving. So he's sort of a receiving tight end,
But slow.
but a slow receiving tight end, and he's a big dude. He's 6'4", 250, but he's not much of a blocker. And
He's a lean 250 too. If you look at pictures of him, he's not a bulky guy.
This is possibly why he's not making it, because the profile doesn't fit. And the other thing was he also got busted and suspended for violation of the league's drugs of abuse policy.
Oh, did he?
As a rookie, yeah.
Should we really be doing that if the DA is snooping around?
Yeah, I know, really.
Yeah.
It might have been last year. I'm mistaken, but because he missed all of his he missed 12 games of his rookie year with an injury, and then he missed 2 in his second year to the drug suspension. So here we are. He just hadn't produced. I don't think anybody should expect this dude to turn into Logan Thomas. He's a warm body. He's a practice squatter for a reason. He's a name. You want to hear the really weird thing though? Here's the funny thing. Do you realize now that we have 2 Texas A&M tight ends on the roster?
No, I did not realize that.
Ricky Seals-Jones also went to A&M.
I didn't notice. I didn't pick up on that. That RSJ is a Texas A&M Aggie or whatever.
Yeah.
Are they the Aggies? I don't even know.
No, they're the Aggies.
Okay.
Yeah.
I should know that,
Texas, like
given that my mother-in-law lives used to live in College Station. But
I live in Texas, so I know these things, even if I don't want to. So I think what you're going to see is Seals-Jones and Bates are the guys, and then who knows if they're going to activate Sternberger or activate Reyes. I think what it tells me is they don't have any faith in Sammis Reyes, is what it tells me.
Yeah, I think Reyes is basically getting that redshirt year to see what he can become next year. That's what it looks like to me anyway. Yeah, so Thomas on IR, like we said, I've heard 4 weeks is the prognosis right now for him. The other 2 guys are basically done. Bostic and McTyer.
They are done.
Yeah. They're done. So I'm a little surprised they haven't made a move for a linebacker. And who is it? The guy from the Dallas Cowboys. He signed with
Jalen Smith.
Bay.
But listen, Jalen Smith.
Yeah.
Somebody at the comment section brought him up when I checked this morning, and people forget that Jalen Smith got arrested for abuse of a woman, and he pulled a rifle on somebody. This was like back in 2017, and I don't remember what happened with that case at all. But this is not a dude who Mr. Military Ron Rivera typically likes. So
no.
I don't think if Jalen Smith is a name, but he also fits perfectly with the Dallas Cowboys. in terms
Right.
of character, and not at all with Ron Rivera.
Sure. And also he hasn't been good for like a
Yeah,
year
that
and a
and he
half.
sucked. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the other thing.
But anyway, they need to make a move at linebacker. We don't know what, but I feel like they need to. All right, let's
Paging
talk
Rob
about
Henson.
yeah, I buddy Rob. I mean, I don't know how he's what 32.
Rob has a whole nother career now, and he probably wouldn't go back. But at this point, he might be able to make it.
The money is still pretty darn good, even if you come in on a vet min salary. Um, all right, well, okay, so let's talk about this game versus the Saints because we got to. I went and watched some of the Saints film, and then I looked at their numbers, and it's funny because the film, what I watched, I didn't realize how, let's say, unique the Saints stats are, Steve. So why don't you give me real quick what the Saints have been doing, what their opponents have been doing to them, because that's the interesting part.
What do you want, offense or defense?
I think the opposing offense I thought was the most interesting thing that was going on with
Saints,
them.
meaning Saints defense.
Yes.
That's what you're trying to say.
Saints defense.
Okay, so they haven't given up a lot of points. They've only given up 69 points. That's in part because they shut out the pathetic Dolphins.
Right.
But here's the thing: they've been really damn good against the run.
Sure.
They're giving up 3.1 yards per attempt against the run, which is third in the NFL, and they've only given up a total of 264 yards on the ground.
Right.
So
I think the highest was in the 80s. Or they had like 2 games in the like 40s and 50s, and then 2 games in the 80s in terms of rushing yards.
Yeah.
Not very good against the run.
Now, if you transition to passing,
yes,
opposing
holy hot
rating,
garbage. That's what I'd say.
No. Opposing quarterback rating 77.2, fourth in the NFL as a whole. And again, you got to factor in the Dolphin factor in here. I understand that. But 63% completion percentage, which is seventh in the NFL. Now they've had a ton of passing against them.
Right. That's where my eyes popped a little.
And part of that is because they're good against the run, but they haven't been that bad. What they don't do well, they don't rush the passer. They don't get sacks. They've only have 6. They're as bad as Washington is. They're only 6 sacks on the year. But here's the stat that really popped out on me. Can you guess it?
Their passing yards?
No, red zone defense.
Oh, okay.
Number 1 in the NFL in red zone defense.
Are they really?
Number 1. Yeah, 33.33% touchdown percentage in the red zone.
I mean, I guess when you go and look at what the Giants did, all their touchdowns came on like 50-yard passes. And that's where you watch how they got beat by the Giants by Carolina. They allowed some big passing plays to those two teams.
Yeah, I think so. And overall, their numbers are good. Some of their numbers are really darn good.
Some of their numbers are good, but their passing, their total number, I think they're allowing. They've passed for about 500, 600 yards, and the opposing teams have passed for double that.
11, specifically over 1,100. And so there's a lot of passing yards. Why? Why is because there's been a lot of passing attempts. They're actually only giving up 7.2 yards per attempt per passing attempt, which isn't a ton. And with the fairly low completion percentage and low quarterback rating, part of the quarterback rating is because they've gotten a ton of interceptions. Whereas Washington's defense has only got 1. These guys have 7. And so all of this should tell you is that, from what Alex is saying, what I'm saying, it should tell you that their passing defense has been bailed out by a lot of interceptions that have ended a lot of drives. That's what it should tell you. I do think they're stingy in the red zone, but a big part of this is they've gotten a lot of turnovers. Specifically they also had a fumble. So they've had 8 turnovers in 4 games.
I didn't realize they had that many turnovers in that many.
So
2 a game, it's pretty good.
What I'm saying is they've gotten 8 turnovers, and that's what's making I think that's what's skewing their numbers, because I don't think this is a great defense in the air. They are on the ground, but I think
I would actually say when you look at the yardage, they are not good in the air, but the turnovers and some of that other stuff helps.
I think the passing yardage numbers are skewed by just how many attempts there are, though. So many attempts, there's going to be a lot of yards,
Sure.
But so to me, I think the key, and I put this in the game preview, which will be published Friday, The key for Washington is passing efficiency, one of them.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, and Taylor's pretty good about it. You got him have smart passes, no interceptions,
Sure. That's
and
where I would worry with Taylor still.
yes. So it's a very interesting defense in this
it
regard.
is. They do very good against running backs. I think Saquon Barkley had an okay day versus them last week, but he's still also not like he's a shell of himself still,
I
in
don't
my
think he's
opinion.
healthy personally.
Yeah. But I don't expect Gibson and McKissick to be the bell cows for this week. They need, if you're gonna win with this passing attack, they do a good job covering running backs in the passing game a little bit. So you need to make sure these passes are going to receivers and whoever's your tight end, and you're getting downfield on the initial passing attack. What I notice is they play kind of like Washington. They play a lot of soft zone initially in their secondary.
They remind me
So
a
take
lot of
advantage of
Washington in
that.
that regard. Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. Speaking of Gibson, so I meant to do this at the top. That was just the injuries I read up were just the IR stuff. There's a
Oh
whole
yeah,
nother
sorry,
list.
you didn't read. I forgot. There's like 30 other injuries we got to
Yeah,
go through.
everybody's hurt. So here's the list. De'Ami Brown knee. The following are did not practices on Wednesday. De'Ami Brown knee, Antonio Gibson shin, Cole Holcomb shoulder, Curtis Samuel groin, Brandon Scherf knee, Cam Sims hamstring. Then the following are limited on Wednesday. Jonathan Allen knee, Shazer Everett knee, Matt Ioannidis a knee, J.D. McKissick an ankle, James Smith Williams a toe, and Benjamin St. Juste a concussion. For the Saints part, they actually have some big names hurt. There's one of their starting tackles, Armstead, elbow, he didn't practice. Their starting corner, their best corner, Marcus Lattimore, was limited with a hand. He full practice but has a hand injury. And then their starting center was out with a calf injury. So there's a whole bunch of injuries in this game, especially Washington.
Yeah. All right. So let's, now that we've got the injuries fully done, let's switch sides and also talk about the Saints offense. And what do we do to stop that? Because
Okay.
all right, you look at that offense, and I'm sure you'll go through the numbers, but this is a running team. When you look at what they're good at, it's their running game. Their running backs are really the core of this offense now. In the post Drew Brees era, I
And
think
when
that's fair to
Alex
say.
says this is a running team, what he means is this is a running
Yes,
team. Okay. Running a lot.
and
They're
they're
actually
good at it. Like when
they're
you
not that good at it though. They're
well, play
not
by
that good
play,
at
they
it.
look very good at it.
They're averaging 4 yards per attempt. The reason why they're piling up yards is they have a ton of rushing attempts.
Sure.
133 rushing attempts at 4 yards a carry equals over 530 yards. Alvin Kamara, who legitimately should scare you guys, everybody,
Yes.
he's only averaging 3.8 yards per attempt, and he doesn't have that many receptions either. So I mean, yes, the Saints are a rushing team. They're Jameis Winston's only had 86 passing attempts, which is 30th in the NFL. He's not been bad, but they just don't use him like that.
He's only
64%.
got 500 something yards, like I said earlier, too.
Yeah, 29th in the NFL, 64% completion percentage, 2 interceptions, 8 touchdowns. He's not been bad, but this is just a running team. But I don't think this is a dangerous running team. I think it's a team that's running because they don't have a lot of options. That's what I think.
I mean, I understand what you're saying because here's what, and this is the eyeball test. Winston, he can stand tall in the pocket. He still throws a great deep ball, but even though his numbers are okay, the accuracy is not special. It's not what you see with Aaron Rodgers or elite passing quarterbacks. Honestly, like yeah, he throws a pretty spiral, but he might miss the receiver by 5 yards.
Maybe they need to start tempting him with lobster or something. And
I don't know. I don't know what they need to do with him.
I mean, their receivers, none of their skill guys really scare me except for Alvin Kamara.
Sure. They have
Deontay
some
Harris.
speed, though. They have some decent speed.
Yeah, but I mean, these guys aren't producing big numbers, though. Deontay Harris, Marquez Callaway, their tight end Adam Trotman. None of these guys are producing big numbers. That's
No.
not to say it couldn't change when you face Washington's defense. Oh, by the way, here's the other thing that just jumped out incredibly to me. They are also second in the NFL in red zone offense. 91%
Touchdown
touchdown
percentage.
conversion, yes, in the red zone. Why is this, you ask? Well, this is the Taysom Hill factor. Taysom
Sure.
Hill hasn't done much. He's thrown 4 passes. One of them was an interception, and he's only had 16 rushing attempts. So he has 3 touchdowns.
Well, he had, I think, 2 last week, or I know he had that one really crazy one where it looks like he had tackled 6 times and still made it into the end zone. Taysom Hill, I hate that he's not with Washington because I feel like a guy like that's just fun to see play.
Do you really think Washington wouldn't have screwed him up long before
Oh,
now?
of course they would have. I know that, but I'm just saying, like, put it up there with like me loving like tight ends and fullbacks, just having like that weird guy who you don't really have a position for him. You give him the ball a few times and he does something and it's fun. I love that.
Jay Gruden would love him. He's a football player.
Yeah. Oh,
Isn't
yeah,
that
yeah.
Jay that used to say that? He's a football
No,
player?
that was Scott. Scott McLuhan would say that.
Oh, okay. Well, then, yeah, Scott would like him.
Scott would like Jay would like him too. I think Jay would have loved having a guy who it's like, hey, just give him the ball. I don't care what he does.
Yeah, that's kind of how they use Taysom because he's not that good a quarterback. I mean, there's a reason why Jameis Winston's there.
Right.
Taysom's just kind of Taysom is what who's the
Tebow.
Yeah, thank you. Taysom is what Tim Tebow could have been if Tim Tebow didn't flake out and go play baseball.
Right. Well, if Tebow hadn't been so like I don't want to be anything but a quarterback, yeah. Like if he had been willing to do other things.
This is what
Taysom
Hill is what Tim Tebow could have been.
I mean, I know this is not the show for it. I've always thought that like these crazy athletic quarterbacks in college, guys who play the triple option, at smaller schools, this is what they should all be trying to become, honestly.
Most of them are becoming this.
Yeah, I guess so, but none of them are doing it like he does, where he actually throws 4 or 5 passes, or what did you say, 16 passes?
Well, no, I said 16 rushing attempts, 16 passes.
Okay, yeah.
I don't think many coaching staffs would be as creative.
I guess that's part of it, yeah.
Sean Payton's a pretty creative dude. He's very irritating in many respects, but what he is creative.
He always looks mad. He always looks just unhappy with everything.
So what do we conclude about the Saints offense? You're going to obviously see a lot of running. So the trick is running. Now, if you look at Washington's defensive numbers, which I'm on the wrong page.
Sure.
And we'll flip back to them.
It's a lot of, if you look at it and it's color coded, Steve, it's the page that's all red. That's the Washington defense page that you have.
Washington has been atrocious in every respect in passing defense for certain, but they've not been horrible against the run. They're giving up 4 yards per rushing attempt, which isn't terrible. That's right along with
not great.
It's not great, but it's not the worst thing in the world. And that's 11th in the NFL, so that's not too bad. Where Washington really fails is 3 things really. One, the obvious, which we all know, third down conversion. They're the worst team in the NFL.
Right there.
They're almost 60%, which is the worst in the NFL.
Yeah.
Interceptions, terrible. They've only had 1 interception. Sacks, terrible. They've only had 7. Interesting, if you dig into their pass rushing numbers, which I did, they've blitzed more than we think, and they're pressuring.
I've heard that from other people too. Yeah.
Well, and I didn't really put together until I started looking at the numbers, and they're getting more pressures. They're like, about ranked 10, I think, in quarterback pressures. So what this means is they're doing it, but they're just not getting home. And so you play these good quarterbacks like Herbert and who's the guy we faced last week, Matt Ryan.
Yeah, Matt Ryan.
If you don't get home, they're going to kill you. And that's what's happening. So Jameis, fortunately, is not nearly as good as these guys. I know Jamal loves him, but Jameis is not Matt Ryan. Let's say it like that. So
he might be more mobile, but that's even Jameis is.
Yeah, that's a low bar.
Court. Yeah, that's a very low bar.
Either. Yeah,
they're probably all in that bottom category of the.
Jameis Winston has 14 rushing attempts for 60 yards. So take that for what you will.
That's actually better than I thought it would be, honestly.
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah.
So the key here really is you have to make the Saints rushing game ineffective. You cannot let them pound it a million times, 80 carries, that's ridiculous. It won't be, but like 30 carries for 4 yards, over and over. They've got to limit the running game. So I think that's the key for Washington's defense.
I think that's one key, but at the same time, this defense we're playing where we let a receiver get open by about 30 yards, you can't do that anymore. Whatever's going on, that deep secondary where Jackson and the free safety or strong safety all just say, we're not going to cover this guy.
Well, let's keep, they got to limit the drives in the time of possession here because remember what we just said about how good the Saints are in the red zone. They get in the red zone, they're scoring touchdowns 9 out of 10 times. And Washington's red zone defense, by the way, is not that good.
No. Well, I believe the technical term is sieve, is what they are called.
Well, I mean, they're ranked 9th, so the number doesn't look as bad, but it's still 50%, over 52%. So it's not nearly what it should be.
And we're bottom. We got to be bottom 5 in terms of points allowed, right? I mean, we're
points allowed. Yeah. I believe we are
second or
30th.
Third worst.
30th. So third
okay, so third worst.
Yeah.
Okay, I figured. I figured that's around where we were.
Yeah, and if you want some raw numbers, they're 29th in total yards, 29th in yards per game surrendered, 29th passing yards, opposing quarterback rating 118.5, which surprisingly is only 17th. But that's
how's
still
that
not
only 17th? What the hell is going on?
Yeah, there must be a lot of bad teams out there. So there you go. I mean, there's some numbers.
By the way, those numbers are very consistent, like 29-30. And then one weird 17 number.
Well, and turnovers, they're 28th in turnovers. They're at -3 already. And the problem is they just aren't getting interceptions. That's why. And then they've also been bad in penalties. 28 penalties is 26 in the league. So there's a very undisciplined team right now. You can
all those
check
numbers
out.
Are very close. All right, Steve, you like to shoot. I do archery. A good cluster. When you get a good, that's what we're doing.
It's a good cluster toward the bottom.
That's exactly what we're doing.
To be fair, if you want me to even it out, because some of you are going to get your feelings hurt with this. Like I said, the good news is that they're 11th in rushing yards per attempt. They've not been horrible in rushing. So
right.
That's, if you want a saving grace, it's probably that. And again, I think the red zone defense number, probably the ranking looks better than it is, but that's not horrible either. But
it's not great.
You know what? I read the wrong number. So they are. Let me back up. Quarterback rating. I was reading from the wrong column. The quarterback rating has been 106.8. Which is 27th in the league.
Okay.
Forget what I just said.
That moves it right back into the cluster.
Right into the cluster. Yeah, Retzler's right. Right into the cluster.
There's a cluster.
Forgive me, I misspoke. I'm sorry.
If you were shooting at a target shaped like a human, the cluster's in the groin area.
It'd be darn good cluster, right there. All of them right there. And unfortunately, it'd be in the outer rung, but
right.
You can't win them all.
Depends on what kind of target you're shooting at. Okay, why don't we go ahead and score this thing and get it over so you can go watch your Dodgers.
You gonna make me go first, huh? Okay.
No, I'll go first if you want.
Go first.
All right.
Go.
All right. I will spoil it. Say this is my birthday game. It's birthday weekend for me, so I gotta go with a win just because of the team, and I want my birthday to be good. I'm gonna say Washington wins this one 35-31. That's my prediction.
That's mighty optimistic of you.
Well, we can't stop anybody. We have to score 35 points to win.
I just think there's way too many injuries and way too much. They got raided by the DEA for Christ's sake this week.
Right.
I mean, there's just way too many injuries, way too much stuff going on. This defense has not shown any signs of life at all because, newsflash, the Falcons sucked. Okay. So I just don't think they're going to pull this out. I mean, they put up 38 points against the Packers in week 1, 28 points against the Patriots. The only team they really didn't look good against was the Panthers, 7 points. So I think they're going to put up points again. I think it's going to be not far from your score, but the other way around. I think it'll be something along the lines of 35-30 Saints.
Okay, so we're both in the same range. It's just who gets that last score.
The cluster is there.
All right, I think we know the show is going to be called The Cluster.
The cluster.
Yeah.
The cluster F, perhaps.
Yes.
Can we say that?
Yeah, I can write it in a way where it's not profane. So there we go.
There we go.
That is the show name, guys, and that is the show. We will talk to you after the game.